Okay. Vino Madonai Eloheinu Aleinu Ma'aseh Adenu Konena Aleinu Ma'aseh Adenu Koneneu. We're going to continue the shiur in Shaare Orah. I'd like to dedicate the shiur today l'refuah shlema for a speedy recovery and health to Yaakov Meir ben Kela. El narafanalo, el narafanalo, el narafanalo. Also, refuah shlema for Reuven ben Hatun Hana. El narafanalo, el narafanalo, el narafanalo. And also refuah shlema for Rav Eliyahu Shimon ben Mazal Fortuna. El narafanalo, el narafanalo, el narafanalo. Are there any other dedications? Okay.
Not me.
Okay. So we're going to start. So we're in the book Shaare Orah, and we are in page Kof Pei Tet in the edition of Shaare Orah that we teach from, which is in the picture in the for the thumbnail, and we're below the line, and we're by Lamed Vav where it says Cholam. And last week, we discussed the fact that there were three different things discussed. One, when it comes time for the vowelization that allows us to pronounce Hebrew, the Hebrew letters. Okay, there is a vowelization that is above the letter. There's a vowelization that's below the letter, and there's a vowelization that's in the middle of the letter. Okay, and we discussed that last time. The cholam is something cholam that is above, that's above the letter. Then shuruk, which is in the middle of the letter, and then chirik, which is below the letter. And the rabbi here is going to discuss now the significance of all of these things vis-a-vis how this works in the Kabbalah. Now, just as an aside, um, the actual vowelization system that we're using that's being discussed here was actually put into practice in around the 800 CE. That's when they actually began to print it or write it with this type of vowelization. That's why the oldest manuscript called the Keter Aram Sova, which has the vowelization that we're discussing here. But when we received the Torah, we were told exactly how to pronounce it, but there was no vowelization, at least not written. If you look at a Sefer Torah, I remember I was giving a class once to ladies, and I guess one of the ladies had actually never seen what a Sefer Torah looks like on the inside. Maybe because she goes to a big synagogue and you can't see that far, and she wasn't aware that when a Baal Koreh is reading the Pesukim in the Hebrew, there's only letters. There's no vowels and there's no trup. There's no signs. So that's why a person who's preparing to read the parasha has to memorize the vowelization of how to pronounce the words. This is exactly how the Torah was transmitted to Moshe Rabbeinu and given over. In the 800s, there was a group of individuals called the Masoretes, and what they did is they developed a system, or that's what they said, they developed a system to allow us to have the ability to read the letters, obviously not in a Torah scroll, but to read the letters with a certain system of vowelization, because Hebrew cannot be understood and cannot be read without vowels. Just like in English, the if I have the word CT, those are the consonants. If I have an A, it's a cat. If I have it's a U, it's a cut. If I have an O, it's a cot. Okay, so we understand that the vowels is what allows in English. The difference between English and Hebrew, or the Romantic languages specifically, and Hebrew, because Hebrew and Arabic and Aramaic have all this same feature shared together, is that the consonants are the letters are all consonants. In Hebrew language, there are no vowels that are consonants. It's not like in English where you have A, E, I, O, U, and sometimes Y. Those are considered to be vowels, which allow you to pronounce the letters. Those are actually letters. A is a letter. U is a letter. O is a letter. That's not how Hebrew works. In Hebrew, all of the letters are consonants, and the vowels are what's the dots, which is underneath the letter, in the middle of the letter, or above the letter. Everybody understand what I just said? If not, please email me any questions you might have or send me a message in the comments, and I can certainly answer any questions. That's just basic Hebrew knowledge. Yes.
When did it Nazareth existed?
When did what?
The Nazareth.
The Masoretes. Masoretes. So the word Masorite is from the Hebrew Mesorah. Mesorah means tradition or transmission more specifically. So they were around the 800 CE, which is 800 years after the Common Era began. Yeah, so we're talking about 1,200 years ago. But that doesn't mean that they knew how to read the Torah for the Torah was given around 1,200 BCE, so they knew how to read the Torah for the 2,000 years before the Masoretes wrote down a vowelization system that allows us to understand, to read it without. But that was how it was transmitted, and the proof of that is, once again, when a person gets Aliyat to Sefer Torah. If a person hasn't prepared the parasha ahead of time, there's no way you can read it because the letters do not have any vowelization. So if you have the word chalav, chalav in Hebrew means milk, right? Het lamed bet, het lamed bet. Those three letters are consonants. You can read it as chalav. You can read it as chelev. Chelev is fat. It's forbidden fats. Very two different words, and that depends on how you vowel, what the vowelization is underneath. This was memorized, just like a Baal Koreh today has to memorize the parasha. This was memorized for all those 2,000 years, and there was committed to a written system of how to do that in the 800s. And that's why it's very interesting. Rabbi Singer will often say this, that Christians, they don't hold by the oral law. If they don't hold by the oral law, they don't know how to read any verse in the Bible, because all of the verses in the Bible are able to be read based on the oral transmission of the vowels. Okay? Okay, so let's talk about the cholem. Cholem is the vowelization. It's the dot that's on top. It's the only one with a vowel. It's the only vowel that's on top. It's a dot. Usually, it's above a vav. There's two kinds of cholem. One is cholem malay. One is cholem chaser. Cholem malay is with a vav with a dot on top, read as o. Cholem chaser is a dot on top without a vav, okay? And that is called cholem chaser, and that's also read as o, okay? So that's why it's called cholem. Chet, vav with a dot on top, lamed, mem. The dot on the top is what makes the vav into an o, okay? Bi'er Rabbeinu b'sefer Hanikud. Our rabbi, I'm sorry, I'm going to go up a little bit higher. I think didn't do this last time. Lamed Hey. The Asod Cholem Shuruk Chirik. We're going to talk about the sod, the secret behind the vowelization system that we have for the Hebrew language. Kidei lehavin inyan zeh, so that we can understand what is going on here. Tzarich lehakdim hakdama achat. We have to make a certain introduction. We have to give an introduction. Surata otiyot, the shape of the letters, morot al seder ha'orot ha'elyonim, basically is telling you about the lights above. When we say light, that's the Kabbalistic metaphor for shefa, for abundance, okay? Which means the letters are telling us about the shefa, the abundance that's coming from the Shamayim. V'harkavatam vehem shemot v'akodesh v'atorah shemehem nivra kol. And not only the lights themselves, but their development as they come through, as the shefa is spread to the world. And these are the names of Hashem, which is precisely what this book, Shaare Orah, is discussing. It's discussing the names of Hashem, okay, and how the names of Hashem are through which the shefa, it delineates how the shefa comes to us through the names of Hashem, okay? That's why you see the connection between the names of Hashem and the sfirot. What's the connection? The sfirot are lenses that allows the light to be transmitted to the next lower level in a way that it can be received. That's the same idea of the letters. The letters, the names of Hashem are connected to the sfirot. So we're right now in the second gate, which is the name is El Chai. That's what we're discussing, and that corresponds to the sfira of Yesod, foundation. Okay, the previous sha'ar we did was the name Aleph Daled Nun Yud Adonai, and that corresponds to the Malchut. And the book is going to continue as we go up and up the sha'arim. Aleph Daled Nun Yud. Okay, so we see a connection between the letters, the otiyot, and the the names of Hashem. Okay. Continuing on, the nikud. So where does the nikud, the vowelization, fit in? What is the connection? So we just discussed the letters, and the letters in Hebrew. There are 22 letters in Hebrew, not including the 5 sofit, which there are 5. I gave a whole class on this basically once. I can share if anybody's interested. You send me in the comments where I discussed this in a little bit more detail. So the sofit letters, which are mem, nun, tzadi, pei, tzadi, kaf, those have 2 forms. One is a form when it's in the middle of the word. One is the form that it's when the end of the word. So there are 22 letters, and out of those 22 letters, 5 of the letters have a different form when it's at the end. It's pronounced the same way. There's no difference in pronunciation, but it's a letter form that's in the middle, and it's a letter form that's in the end of the word. So what about the nikud? So how does the nikud fit into what we just said, which is the vowelization of the Hebrew letters? The nikudu keneged ha'orot ha'pnimim hamini'im et ha'orot. So now he's saying that the nikudot, the dots, which make up the vowelization of the Hebrew language, are the pnimiyim. So the otiot, the letters, are the chitzonim, are the outer manifestation, and the vowelization is the inner manifestation. And when we have a Sefer Torah, the Sefer Torah, it's
The nekudot are the inner.
inner, correct. And that's why they are hidden. In a Sefer Torah, you do not have nikudot. You don't have vowelization because there's the outer form. That's what the Sefer Torah is, the outer form. And then there's the inner form, which is how you read those letters, which is the nikudot.
That's what they are hiding.
That's what's being hidden, correct. And that's so without, and this is it's a beautiful analogy. We discussed this before, and I'll mention it again. There are people who like to study the pshat, the simple meaning of the Torah, the simple meaning. But the problem is, the Gaon of Vilna says this clearly, a person who doesn't understand the sod, doesn't understand the secret, doesn't understand the deep meaning, doesn't understand the simple meaning. And when it says, En hakatuv yotze mideh pshuto, most people understand that to mean in a simple fashion that the simple meaning of the pasuk always has to be the meaning. And that's not how it really works. The way it works is the simple meaning can only be understood through the sod, which means if a person is looking at the simple meaning and doesn't understand the sod, he's liable to make many, many, many mistakes. And some of those mistakes can be catastrophic, as we see 2.8 billion people read the simple meaning of the Hebrew verses of the Bible, of the Hebrew Bible, and misunderstand it and come to a conclusion and base their entire religion on mistakes, which leads people astray. So we have to understand the simple meaning in the context of the sod, in the context of the secret meaning. Now, of course, the sod is the deepest level, and there are more superficial levels in the sod. There's the remez and the drash, but the sod is the deepest. So he's talking about the nikud, and the nikud he's saying is basically what is giving the letters motion or life, because without the nikud, the letters are dead. You don't know how to read the word without the nikud. So just letters alone is a goof, is a body. And what do we call a body that has no soul? Dead. So you can understand that the nikud, the vowelization, is the soul of the letters. When we say pnimi and chitzon, it's the same thing. The chitzon is the goof. What's inside is the sod, the secret, and that's what gives life to the letters. So the letters without the nikud are dead. And that's why if you take a Sefer Torah, in and of itself, while of course the Sefer Torah has holiness to it because of all, it was written in holiness and has all of Hashem's names and letters in it, okay? What's the halacha if a Sefer Torah is pasul? What do we do with it? We try to fix it. What if we can't fix it? What if there's something there and it can't be fixed, or it's so old and the letters are weak? What do you do with a Sefer Torah? You bury it. Yes, you bury it. It's like a dead body. A Sefer Torah that is the letters are improper, we bury it, right? What do you do with a Sefer Torah that was written by an apikoros, someone who doesn't believe in God? He's got a beautiful handwriting.
You have to bury it.
That's not the halacha. You burn it.
Wow.
Burn it. Okay, which means it's not even worthy of a burial. It's basically has no holiness whatsoever because it wasn't written with the proper intent of a person that has Yirat Shamayim. So we have a Sefer Torah. You can't recognize who wrote that Sefer Torah. What was their intention when they wrote the Sefer Torah? Is everything a Sefer Torah written by a beautiful calligrapher who learns all the halachot of how to write a Sefer Torah in a beautiful handwriting. And you're looking at it, the body looks great, but the soul is rotten. And if the soul is rotten, the Sefer Torah is burned. Okay, let's continue on. So we understand that the nikud, the vowelization, what gives motion, or better term, life to the letters.
Nikud is the action of putting the nekudot.
That's correct. The vowelization, meaning in Hebrew we said the consonants are all letters, right? Otiot, ot is a letter. That's a consonant in Hebrew. And all of the vowels in Hebrew, there's no Hebrew vowel that's a letter. All the Hebrew vowels are basically nekudot. And we're going to...
The action of putting the nekudot in the context is called nikud.
Correct. That's the verb. That's a verb form. Nikudot are vowels. Vowel.
The nekudot is the noun, and the
nikud is a verb. Correct. Okay. The shaotio bli nikud. What are letters that don't have vowels? Hem guf bli tinuah. They're a body that has no life, soul, no movement. Because if I have a Sefer Torah, the Sefer Torah has no purpose unless it is read. When do you see the wisdom that's contained within the Sefer Torah? When it is read, when a person takes the Sefer Torah and reads it. That's why we see a halacha. We're going to learn this in a couple of weeks, Bezrat Hashem, that the Melech, every Jew has to write a Sefer Torah before they die. They have to commission and write a new Sefer Torah. That is a mitzvah aseh from the Torah, to write one Sefer Torah. The king has to write two Sefer Torah. One Sefer Torah he carries with him all the time. It was a very small one. It says he would carry it on his arm in the same place you put the tefillin, right? Maybe on the right side rather than the left side, okay? And what would he do? The Torah says, V'kara bo kol yemei chayav. That all the days of his life, what does he do with that Sefer Torah? He has to read it. A Sefer Torah that is not read, it's still holy, just like a Jewish body that is dead is tameh, but it has to be treated with proper respect. The way a Sefer Torah comes alive is not when it's in the Aron Kodesh. When it's in the Aron Kodesh, it's not really alive. When is it alive? When it's taken out before the congregation and read before the congregation. That is when the Sefer Torah is alive. She'otiyot bli nikud hem guf bli tinuah. The letters without any vowelization is like a body without any movement. She'afilu higui hayotzet ot aleph. Even if you take the simplest letter, the first letter of the Hebrew alphabet, the aleph. What is that? The way we read the letter aleph is with a patach. Aleph. Right? The Hebrew word for the letter aleph is aleph. And how's that read? That's read as a with a patach underneath the aleph. Ubli tunuot, and without movement, without these vowelization, how do you read an aleph without any tunuah? There's no way. You'll see sometimes in the Hebrew language, you'll see a hey in a word. And here's a perfect example. Aleph. We read it a couple of weeks ago in Parashat Behalotecha. What does it say? Veha safsuf, the mixed multitudes. If you look in the Hebrew, in the Sefer Torah, Veha safsuf, how's that spelled? Vav, Hey, Aleph, Samach, Pei, Samach, Pei Sofit. But the Aleph has no vowelization underneath. So therefore, some people read it wrong. They'll read it as Veha Asafsuf. That's not the right way to read that. There is no vowel under the Aleph, so the vowel is not pronounced. The letter is not pronounced. There's a name in Hebrew, one of the sons of Yaakov. His name is Yisachar. If you look in a Sefer Torah, how many sin? It's Yud, Sin, Sin, Kaf, Resh. That's how you write the name Yisachar, right? But how do we read it? We don't read it Yisachar. Why? Because in the scene, the second scene, there's no vowel and there's no nikud. So since there's no nikud, the letter cannot be read. Take a hey at the end of the word, Hashamayma, right? Which means toward the sky. The hey at the end is not pronounced. Hashamayma, which means if I take away the hey and I have the patach and the mem before the hey, it's still pronounced Hashamayma. So Hebrew letters that do not have vowels underneath are not pronounced. We got that?
Yes.
Okay. Which means that they are technically sort of dead. Without a vowel, they are not alive. They cannot be spoken. Like Rav Chaim Volozhin wrote in a Nefesh HaChaim in Shaar Bet Perak Yud Zayin, Sha'otiyot levad below nikudot nikraim b'chinat nefesh. So the Nefesh HaChaim says the letters alone, without any vowelization, are called nefesh. Nefesh, which means the lowest level, nefesh, right? Shehu bechinat maaseh. The nefesh is maaseh, is action, it's deed. The nekudot hem bechinat ruach shalahem, and the nekudot are the ruach of the otiyot. And what do we call a person that has no ruach? What is a person that doesn't have ruach? Dead. Exactly. Exactly. And that's why when Hashem creates Adam, when does Adam is initially created as a mold, as physical, which means his body is already created. At what point does he become called Nefesh Chaya? Vayipach be'apav. When Hashem put into his nostrils Ruach Chayim. So it's the same idea. We have otiyot, but what gives the otiyot ruach, gives them life? It is the nekudot, is the vowelization. Shanekudot ba'im im ha'otiyot al yedei dibur shel adam, which means what allows the otiyot to become alive? The nekudot. And what is the purpose of the nekudot? To allow a person to be able to read the word, to read the letters, which means it's the nefesh, the person that comes and takes the Sefer Torah and makes it alive. It's interesting, in a halacha point of view, Baruch Hashem, there are many Jews who understand that when a Sefer Torah is taken out of the Aron Kodesh, they stand up. Yes, a Sefer Torah, when it comes within, you can see it, it's moving. As long as the Sefer Torah is moving, a person stands up. You don't sit down in the presence of a Sefer Torah. But what's more holy, a Sefer Torah or a teacher of what's written in the Sefer Torah? So just like we have to stand up for a Sefer Torah when we see it, a Sefer Torah without a teacher is useless. It has no life. It's the teacher or the reader of the Sefer Torah, the one who explains the Sefer Torah, that gives the Sefer Torah life. So if one stands up for a Sefer Torah, which halachically is the proper thing to do, one has to also stand up for someone who has a Sefer Torah inside themselves and is teaching Torah to other people. That is a person one also has to stand up for. Why? Because a Sefer Torah without a teacher is dead. So it's the dibur of the person, the speech of the person, that takes the letters of the Sefer Torah with the nikudot and gives it life. Shehu bechinat ruach. And how does a person read Sefer Torah? What do they do to read? What's coming out of their mouth as they're speaking? Ruach. A chacham that is dead can't breathe, doesn't breathe. And since they're not breathing, they're no longer teaching. Now, of course, if they write words of Torah down, or Baruch Hashem nowadays with YouTube, that people can live on after they've passed away. I remember once I was so happy I found on YouTube one of my favorite rabbis of all time, Rabbi Aryeh Kaplan, Zichron Tzadik Livracha, and I saw a video. He was being interviewed on a news station, a Gentile news station, and I actually saw the rabbi and heard him speak. And it's amazing because this technology I never met Rabbi Kaplan. By the time I was old enough to appreciate what Rabbi Kaplan had to teach, he was dead, but he was living maybe 2 miles from where I lived my entire life. He was living in Brooklyn, in Flatbush, and I lived in Kensington. I could have visited him and heard him speak at any time. I was young. I didn't realize back then how important that was. I was probably less than a teenager. I was high school, actually. So when I was able to see the rabbi's face and hear the rabbi talk, I'm like, wow, this is amazing, because that gave everything that I read from him. Now I remember his voice and I know what he looks like, right? We see that gives an extra oomph. Now, I don't know what the Rambam's voice was like. We have a picture that we think that's what he looks like based on an artist's rendition, okay, or a self-portrait that he had made. But we don't know what Moshe Rabbeinu looked like. We don't know the voice of Moshe Rabbeinu. But nowadays, Baruch Hashem, the technology that we have the ability not only to teach Torah 1,500 miles away to someone who wants to learn on a Sunday morning, but we also have the ability to hear our teachers even after they've passed away as if they are still alive. May we all live till 120. Continuing on. Shehu bechinat maaseh. So we understand the otiot are the maaseh, the action, and then the vowelization is the ruach, okay? And the kamoshi ikar chiyot ha'adam, the essential life of the person, al yidei bechinat haruach. The person lives because they are breathing, which means they have wind going in and wind going out. When a person is no longer breathing, that is a sign that they are dead. Continuing on, Shebo shebetzet mimenu haruach umet. When the ruach, when the spirit, or the word ruach really means wind. It doesn't mean spirit per se. Ruach is really, it means both actually, but we understand the word ruach is what we discussed, moving air. Air that is moving is called ruach, which means what makes a person alive? By the fact that they are moving air into their body and moving air out of their body. Speech, that's what makes human beings unique vis-a-vis animals. Animals have ruach. They have the ability to breathe, but they don't have ruach, the power to speak. So we see ruach, how important it is. Ken ikar chiyot tenuat ha'otiyot hamanekudot, and the essential way that the letters are able to be read, which means gives them life, which makes them move, shibiltam iyefshar lahotzi ha'otiyot me'apeh. Because without the nikudot, without the vowelization, we would not be able to pronounce any of the letters of the Torah. Continuing on, that was the introduction that the Nefesh HaChaim gives to what we're talking about. Now we're going to go to the Sod. V'lachen shloshet hayesodot. We discussed there are 3 foundations: the foundation above, the foundation in the middle, and the foundation on the bottom. We discussed that last time. Shehem El Chai, that's El Chai. Notnim et chiyut hatenuah lishloshet hakochot sheyesh bebriya. They gave the chiyot, the life and the movement to the 3 forces that are of the creation. Lemala, lemata, vekoach hamesovav, which is below, above, and the one that is causing everything to happen. When he says lamala here, he doesn't mean the upper one. What he means is the one that's above the lowest one. But because the highest one, okay, that is the one that's called mesovev. What does mesovev mean? Causes everything to happen. Now he's going to go into more detail over here. And this is hinted in the 3 tenuot, cholem, shuruk, and chirik. Chirik being the lowest, mata, the shuruk being mala, which is above mata, and then the cholem, which is mesovev, which is the one that causes everything to happen. Hem ba'im kemo nekuda. And why are they in the shape of a nekuda? We have other vowels like a kamatz and a patach that are not dots. Other vowels are the kamatz is a T, the patach is a line. Yes, we have three dots. That's called a kubutz. Yes, we have other vowels. Okay, but these vowels, the ones we're discussing here, are one dot. The cholam is one dot, the shuruk is one dot, and the chirik is one dot. שהיא הטיפה שמונחים בה כל כוחות החיות של העולם שמתחתיה. Because they are giving life to everything underneath. So they're like a tipa. What is a tipa? A drop, a small amount. כמו שכל עולם החיות והתנועה שלו היא שונה, and because the substance of every one of the worlds is different, the bria, yetzirah, asiyah, the sustenance of each of those worlds is different. Similarly, the dot that is giving the life, that is giving the chiyut, is different. Not different in its shape, different in its placement and pronunciation. Hanekuda betachtit, the nekuda that's the lowest one, hi hachirik, that is the chirik, like the word chirik. Underneath the chet in the chirik is a chirik. That's the little dot that's underneath the chet. Shehi hakoach hamoshech klepei mata. This is the koach that draws below. Hanekuda shel olam ha'elyon, the nekuda of the upper world, shenoset hakol, umoshech hakol elav hu hacholem. The one that's above the letter, the cholem, is the one that is basically, here he calls it elyon, because it's the highest one. He's making a difference between the word mala and elyon, right? In Hebrew, the word mala means above. The word elyon means above all. So we have mata, which is below. We have mala, which is above. And we have elyon, which is above all. The cholem is above all. It's mala, above everything. It's elyon. That's the word that's used in the Hebrew. Shonoset hakol, because it is carrying the life of everything depends on the cholem. Umoshech hakol elav hu hacholem, and draws everything to it. That's the cholem. The nekudah emtzait, and the nekudah that's in the middle, shemekasheret et kol ha'olamot, that is connecting all the worlds. Uminiyautam, and gives them the ability to move all the worlds. He nekudat hashuruk, the shuruk, which is a vav with a dot in the middle. The shuruk tamid. He's going to explain why it's a vav. While you have a cholem chaser and a cholem maleh, you can have a cholem with a vav. You can have a cholem without a vav. You never have a shuruk without a vav. There is no example anywhere where there's a shuruk without a vav. Why? He's going to explain that now. The shuruk tamid nichtevet im ot vav. The shuruk is always written with a vav and a dot in the middle. Ve'ena omedet kinikuda b'fnei atzma. And it doesn't stand as a dot by itself, which means the cholem is above the letter. And so many times the cholem is chaser, which means there's no vav. It stands above the letter, there's no vav. The chirik is below the letter, okay? But it stands alone. There's no letter connected to it other than the letter that it's coming to explain. Whereas the cholem is the shuruk is always associated with a vav. Why? Lehorot nekudat hayesod, to teach us that the dot of the yesod, the function of the yesod, shalom moshechet milamala ad lemata, to tell us that it's basically the purpose of the shuruk is to draw from above to below and below to above. What do we call that? We call that a channel. And a channel is a vav. Okay. He's hinting here, he's really hinting here about what's called the partsufim. This is really what the rabbi is hinting to here, the partsufim, right? Because how many partsufim are there? Usually there are 5, right? Arich Anpin corresponds to the Keter. Abba corresponds to the Chokhmah. Ima corresponds to the Binah. Let's skip to the bottom. Nukva corresponds to the Malchut. All of those have something in common. Those 4 partsufim have only one sphira, right? Keter for Arich Anpin, Chokhmah for Abba, Binah for Ima, and Malchut is the Nukva. The Ze'er Anpin has 6 sphirot, hinted to with the Vav. Why? That's the only one of the partsufim that is made up of more than one sphira. We got that? That's what the rabbi is hinting to here. And the reason it's made of more than one sphira because all the channeling of all the energy must come through the Ze'er Anpin. The Ruach. Okay, let's continue on. We see the Yesod draws from above and below. Okay? Wow. From the head of the Tiferet, which is buried, which is found in the Da'at. So if we take the Keter off, we have Chokhmah Binah Da'at Ze'er Anpin, and then we have the Malchut, right? So the head of the whatchamacallit, of the Ze'er Anpin is in the Da'at. The Ad Siyum Shel Tiferet Lashpia La Malchut, until the end of the Tiferet, which is finished in the Malchut. Now let's talk about that for a second. Let's talk about human anatomy. Okay. Human anatomy, the Ze'er Anpin corresponds to the chest, the torso. What gives the torso structure?
The physical structure, the bones of the
Which bones?
ones in the thorax.
Let's think about that. You have an abdomen. There's no bones of the thorax in the abdomen, right?
Only organs.
What keeps the abdomen, which is the same thing that technically keeps the thorax straight? The spine. Which means if I take off all the ribs, I'm not sure we should do that. If I take off all the ribs and there was muscle here, just like we have muscle in the abdomen, the organs in here would stay here. The organs in the abdomen don't leak out, even though there's no bones protecting them, right? So what's holding up the torso is not the ribs. What's holding up the torso is the spine, right? The ribs are there to protect the vital organs, the lungs, the heart. The liver is underneath the ribs, even though it's in the abdomen. The diaphragm is right. So the ribs are there to protect vital organs. Okay. But the ribs do not provide structure or the ability to stand up. What provides the structure is the spine and the muscles that are around the spine, in medical terms called the erector spinae. What is the word spinae? Spine. What is erector in Latin? Upright. Correct. Okay. Erector spinae, which means it's the spine and the muscles of the spine that what do? They hold the person upright. If a person has a bad back, they're not upright. They are leaning over. Where does the spinal cord? So we have the spinal cord on the bottom, which terminates in the sacrum, which is the bone that's in the back, the coccyx and the sacrum. Yes. Where does the spine end? If you go up, where does it end? At the base of the skull. It penetrates the skull, right? Because the highest bone, which is called the atlas, I think is the highest bone, yes? That's cervical 1, okay? Cervical 1. and that is what the head is resting on. Now we know Greek myth.
It gives the balance to the
What do we know about Greek mythology? If I tell you Atlas, what does it say Atlas does?
very powerful.
Holds up the world on his shoulder. Where do they get that from? It's
Charles Atlas.
it's a perversion of what we're learning now. What did we just say? We just said the yesod, which corresponds. You have the zeranpin, which the bottom is this yesod, and the top is the chesed. But really, what the rabbi just said here is we don't think about the keter. We have the dot. And what does he say? The yesod, which corresponds also. That's also the foundation of the person. Is the yesod. That's what holds the person up. Yes. It terminates it holds up the skull, right? It's terminating in the dot. That's what he's saying here. So when the Greeks would say that Atlas holds up the world, what they're really saying is Tzaddik Yesod Olam. Okay? Anyway, just a connection between a little bit of medicine, anatomy, Greek perversion of truth, and the truth, which is the Torah and the Kabbalah. Okay? So he says over here that the Vav doesn't stand on its own, but it has the Vav, the Shuruk, right, is not by itself. It's always accompanied with a Vav. Lehorot, to teach shenikudat hayesod shalo, that the nikudah, that's the yesod, that's what the Shuruk is, moshechet milamala adamata, which draws from above down to below. Mirosh HaTiferet, from the head of the Tiferet, Hanautz Midat Bedat, which is in the Da'at, all right? Ad Siyum Shel Tiferet Lashpia LeMalchut, until the end of the Tiferet, which is to influence the Malchut. The end of the Tiferet is the Yesod, and the highest part of the Tiferet is the what's Nautz Badat. Okay. All right, let's do a little bit more. Now he's going to talk about each individual vowel. I have till 12 o'clock, by the way. Okay? If you have till 12 o'clock, we'll go till 12. Cholem. What is the cholem? We just discussed it a little bit. Now we're going to go into more detail. Bi'er Rabbeinu b'Sefer HaNikud. Rabbi Gikatilia has another book. And the other book is called Sefer HaNikud. He wrote a book called Sefer HaNikud. I think I have it up here. Okay? What does he say? What does Sefer Nikud mean? The book of the dots, or the book of the vowels. Okay? Reshit kol hanikudot umalat kol hasulamot. Wow. The head, in the most important, the beginning of all of the vowels, of all the dots, umalat kol hasulamot, and the level of all of the ladders. What is the purpose of a ladder? Or to come down, to go up or come down. Olim v'yordim bo. We see from the Hine Sulam Mutzav Arza. That's what Yaakov Avinu saw in his dream. He saw a ladder that was Mutzav Arza, that was buried, that was on the ground. V'umalache Elohim, and angels of God, Olim v'yordim bo. So we see the purpose of a ladder is a purpose to go up and a person to come down. Hi hanikuda hanikret cholem. So the reshit, the head, the top of the ladder is the cholem. This is from Rabbi Gikatil's other book, yeah? Here I'm going to explain. Da, you should know. Ki yod hi hadaka hapnimit shebechol haotiyot. What is the smallest of the letters? Yod. That is correct. Okay? Like we read, and why is Yod the smallest of the letters? He's going to explain. Vehi ot rishona shel havaya yitbarach, and the ot Yod is the first letter of Hashem's name, Yod Ke Vav Ke. The Romezet, what is the Yod hinting to? Al sod sfirat chokhmah be'etzem amitata. The secret of the Sfirah of the Chokhmah, Be'etzem amitata. What is he really saying here? It's the keter, right? The yod corresponds to the chokhmah, but there's a kotz on the yod, a thorn on the yod, and that corresponds to the keter. If you would open up your tefillin, or if you would open up Aron Kodesh, look in the Sefer Torah, you will see that every yod is written with a little kotz on top of it. Now you got to look on the inside. You're not going to be able to see it. You have to look at the parchment. Okay, if you go to the mezuzah that's on the Bet Knesset where you're in right now, and as long as the Shin Daled Yud is facing you, you look at the Yod, you will see that there's a kotz on the Yod. Okay, next time Bezrat Hashem you get an Aliyah, look for the Yod. Okay, Veromezet al haketer bekotza. This is the rabbi is saying. The Yod corresponds to the Chokhmah, but the hint for the keter is in the kotz. What is the kotz similar to? Has a similar feature as the cholem. It's above the letter, and it's a dot. It's a very small, right? What do we see the cholem does? The cholem is above the letter yod, right? And what does it do? And it causes it to function, causes it to act. Vehu sod hakotz legamre. And that is the secret of the kotz. What is the rabbi saying? I'll give you the pasuk, you tell me why. Reshit chokhmah yirat Hashem. Yirat Hashem. Before a person can develop their chokhmah, they must have yirat Hashem.
Yeah, fear of God.
Or awe of God. That's ideal, right? When a person starts out, they have fear of God. They have fear of punishment. And that gets them to learn the Torah, understand what does God want from us, and to perform properly. The goal as a person then learns is they get love of Hashem, because as they get to know Hashem, they love Hashem, because you can't love something that you do not know. You have to know something. That's why the intimacy in the Torah is called yeda. When two people have relations with each other in the Torah, it's called yeda. Vayeda Adam et ishto. What does that mean? He got to know her. How did he get to know her? In the physical way, which is relations. So the ultimate connection between two human beings, the closest, holiest connection of two human beings, when it's the proper person in the proper time, is yeda. Intimacy. So once a person gets to know God by developing their chokhmah, and they have ahava of Hashem, then what's supposed to happen is they're not supposed to be afraid of punishment. They're supposed to be afraid of sin. That's called yirat chet. Much, much higher level. What's the difference between yirat onesh and yirat chet? Yirat onesh is a person motivated by what's going to happen to them, right? What's going to happen? If I do this sin, I'm going to be punished in this way. It's about you. Yirat chet is, I don't want to sin. Why? Because I know that when I sin, it affects my connection with Hashem. And I don't want to be disconnected with Hashem. That's called yirat chet. I'm afraid not of the punishment I'm going to receive, or to understand this in a different way, the only punishment I'm afraid of that I want to avoid is disconnection from Hashem. Because I love Hashem so much that I want to maintain that connection. That's what the rabbi is hinting to here. That before there is chokhmah, there must be yirah. If there's no yirah, there's no chokhmah. When we have professors in various universities in the land of Israel that are Talmudic scholars, that know Talmud perhaps better than some rabbis know Talmud. But what's the problem? They don't have Yirat Shamayim. They don't believe in God. They have
Whatever they do, we have to burn.
but correct, but there's another thing. They have no chokhmah. They have da'at, knowledge, but they have no chokhmah. Chokhmah can only be achieved when a person has Yirat Hashem. No Yirat Hashem, no chokhmah. And the more Yirat Hashem a person has, the more chokhmah they are able to collect. We have a pasuk for that. Yirat Hashem hi otzaro. It's from Mishlei, and it's talking about the storehouse of wisdom. Where is the storehouse of wisdom? Yirat Hashem, which means as a person's Yirat Hashem grows more, their chokhmah increases. Or if a person wants to have chokhmah and retain it and not let it evaporate, they have to have a place to store it. Where do they store it? In Yirat Hashem. That's what the rabbi is saying here, that the Yod and the Kotz are connected to each other. They cannot be separated. Which means the Keter responds to the Yirat Hashem. That's the Yirat Hashem, the beginning of everything. And that precedes the Chokhmah. And what's the best way to develop Yirat Hashem?
That's a good one.
If you look on the synagogue, many synagogues have it there, but people don't really understand what it means. Da lifne mi ata omed. Know from before whom you are standing. I'm not sure that synagogue has it, but many Ashkenaz synagogues have that. Da, which means intimate knowledge. Lifne, from before who you stand or whom you stand. Milifne, da milifne mi amed. Know from before whom you are standing. Lifne melech macheh hamelachim hakadosh baruch hu. Why does that give Yirat Hashem? The end part. Melech macheh hamlachim hakadosh baruch hu. The king, Melech, Malchei, of all kings, Melachim, of kings. Really, Melech Machei Hamlachim means the king of kings that are of kings. The Holy One, blessed be He. And how does that bring to Yirat Hashem? When a person says to himself, this king, this amazing king, has a ratzon, has a will that I do mitzvot. I'm nothing. I'm zero. I'm dirt. I'm a speck. This master of the universe has a ratzon that I do mitzvot. That brings Yirat Hashem. Or that the actions that I do have an impact because it's the ratzon of Hashem that I perform in this way. Or it's against the ratzon of Hashem if I don't perform in this way. And when a person understands the greatness of God, Melech Macheh Hamlachim, immediately what happens? Yirah comes into the heart. And now the person is open for prayer. Now the person is open for studying Torah. Because without Yirat Hashem, that's a Yod without a Kotz. Anyway, he's hinting to all this in remember, the Rishonim, when they're writing very, very short. They're expecting you to be able to fill in the blanks from what you've learned. Yes? Otherwise, you're not ready to learn it. That's the blanks here. Sod Sefirat Chokhmah be'etzem. What is etzem? Etzem, the essence. What is the essence of Chokhmah? Yirat Hashem. The remezet ala keter bekotzah, and it's a remez to the keter with the thorn on the keter. V'hinei acholem hu hamania ot yod v'hi lemala mimena, and we see the cholem is what is giving action, giving life to the yod. V'hu sod hako. I'm sorry. Nimtza. 1 second. V'hu sod hakos legamre, and it's the same thing. The cholem and the kotz are connected to each other, even though the kotz is part of the letter yod, but the cholem is also hinting to the same idea. What's the idea the cholem is hinting to? The keter. And where is the keter? On a king, above his head. And the chokhmah corresponds to the right brain. The binah corresponds to the left brain. What's above that? That's the keter. Ve'im hayod kodesh ki amro ha'asiri yeh kodesh la'Hashem. Now we have ha'asiri yeh kodesh la'Hashem. That's from the concept of maaser behema. What is maaser behema? If a person has flocks, brand new flocks that are born, what do? You have a rod. You have a rod, and then you have animals go underneath the rod. Yes, and what happens? The 10th animal is called Kodesh LaHashem. Every Hasiri, the Torah says, Ha'asiri Yeh Kodesh LaHashem. Right? Think about what's going on there. The Bikurim is different. What is the Bikurim? The first fruits are the ones that are holy. The first fruits that grow on the tree are holy. Regarding Maaser Behema, it's the 10th one. How do we understand that?
That's Maaser.
How do we understand? Okay, let's go deeper than that. The Keter and the Malchut have something in common. What do they have in common? There's the Keter. What's the true term for Malchut? It's not Malchut. It's Keter Malchut. Why? Because the Malchut is the Keter of the world below. We've discussed this before. So if you have the world of the Bria, the Keter of the world of the Bria is the Malchut of the world of Atzilut. So even though one is the first Sphira and one is the last Sphira, not exactly.
The 10th sheep is called
Kodesh. And the Bikurim,
It's called what?
Kodesh, holy.
Wow. And the Bikurim are the first fruits. We know that.
So we hear the Bikurim are also Kodesh, but that's the first fruits.
Only the first one.
Right? So think about this. When a person comes to Bet Knesset, yes, and there's 9 people there, no minyan, right? The 10th person comes. What do we call him?
Kodesh.
Asiri Kodesh. Does that mean the first 9 are not Kodesh? No. But the Asiri is the one that brought the Kedusha to the other 9. And the person who comes first to Bet Knesset is also important, right? The Gemara says in Masechet Brachot that there's a pasuk that Madua bati ve'en oneh. Why did I come and there is no? We read that last week. Actually, we read this last week in the Haftarah. Madua bati ve'en oneh. Why did I come and there's no one to answer? Meaning what? When a shul says synagogue starts at 9:00. I know sometimes people come 9:00 exactly. Sometimes they come 9:05. Sometimes they come 9:10. Sometimes they come 9:20. But you can be rest assured one thing. When in the bulletin it says the shul starts at 9:00, the Shekhinah is there at 9:00. And what happens if the Shekhinah comes at 9:00 and nobody is there? Right away Hashem gets angry. Madua bati ve'en oneh. Why did I come and there's no one to answer? It doesn't say, why did I come and there aren't 10 to answer? Madua bati ve'en oneh. Oneh is singular, which means the person who comes first to the Bet Knesset, what does he do? He quiets the anger of the Shekhinah because, okay, Baruch Hashem, one person is there, that means they're coming. This is the same thing we're talking about. The Bikurim represents that first one that comes. The Asiri Kodesh represents the Maser Behema. They're both very important. Okay? Wow. Okay, let's continue on. I have another 10 minutes. Okay. Nimsa cholem shalea kodesh kodashim. We see the cholem is kodesh kodashim. It's above the letter, right? V'nei cholem al hayod k'mo haneshama etzel halev. And the cholem above the yod is like the neshama that's above the heart, right? The neshama, again, the neshama is in the whole body. But if we understand the intellectual part of the neshama, that's here. Here is the neshama, ruach, and the nefesh is in the liver. What do we see from that? Liver is tachton. Heart is lamala mea liver. Elyon is the brain. So we see in our body, mi bisari echeze eloah. What does that mean? From my flesh, I can understand how Hashem created the world. How? The brain is like the cholem. The heart is like the shuruk. And the liver is like the chirik. Which means the cholem is above the middle. Husod ram v'nisa. Ram, which means elevated, and nisa, lifted up. Ram v'nisa, shochen meromim. The dweller in heights. This is how we refer to Hashem. Ram v'nisa. Ram, which means high up, okay, and nisa, lifted up. One is without human action. Ram has nothing to do with us. Nisa is us. We lift Hashem up by marketing and talking about what Hashem does in the world. That's the job of the Jew. Nisa. Ram is his status. His status is he's above there. Whether there's Jews around to say it or not, he's still Ram. What makes him Nisa is the action of Jewish people. Ram is the Keter, Nisa is the Malchut. Anyway. V'usod shenikra makom, and this is the secret of the word makom. What does the word makom mean? Place.
Place.
Okay, but it doesn't mean place. Why? Because we refer to Hashem as hamakom. And we know about Hashem, he has no place. What does that mean? A place limits a person. If I'm in New York and you're in Boca Raton, okay, we are not close to each other, right? The place is limiting. Physically. So, but we apply the word mak, and now we have something that is not physical, or it is physical, sort of connecting us, even though we're 1,500 miles apart, we are connected as if we were 2 feet apart, right? Amazing. But what do we understand from here? He just said, the word makom, we refer to Hashem, one of the names of Hashem is hamakom. What do the Ashkenazim say when they go to a Shiva house? Hamakom yinachem etchem. What is hamakom? How do you refer to Hashem as hamakom, the place? There's no place. Place basically is a physical word. No. What does the word makom mean from a spiritual point of view? Perush, noseh et ha'olam. Carries the world, or in a better term, gives existence to the world. So when we refer to Hashem as Hamakom, what are we really saying? The one who gives existence to all. When we refer to a place in time and space, we're saying that we have a book that's in this place in this time based on the makom that it's in, which means the makom, the table, is what's giving the book existence in time and space there. If the makom disappears, what happens? The book falls to the ground until it gets to the next place that provides it existence. But since there's only one God, if Hashem Chas v'Shalom removes his will for the world to exist, it ceases to exist. That's the word makom. Makom really means gives existence to everything. So even though we understand the word makom from a physical point of view, the true understanding of the word makom is spiritual, and the physical is hinting to what's going on in the spiritual world. Just like, what do we call what we're sitting in right now? A chair. We're sitting on a chair. The chair is the makom for our behind. Yes, that's the makom. If we get up and move to another chair, that chair becomes the new place for our makom, for our behind. And this is the cholam. Remember, the Kabbalah is everything is a little bit the opposite, right? We talked about this last week. Olam hafuch ra'iti. I saw a world upside down. What does that mean? That the root is below and the branches are above. Unlike in the world, right? A tree is like that. A tree, the roots are below and the branches above, right? But in the spiritual world, the roots are above and the branches are below. And the letter that allows that mesovav, that makom, the same word. Makom means mesovav. What is mesovav? The cause for everything to exist. Mesovav. And we said the cholam represents the cause of everything to exist. That's the keter. And the cholam represents the keter. Just like the kots of the yud represents the keter. The sof davar en lecha nekuda b'chol nekudot lamala minikudot hacholem. And there's no letter. There's no nekuda that's above the cholem. The cholem is the highest. V'da ki nekudat cholem hi neshama leneshamot remez ala keter. Wow, what he just said is incredible. And the cholem represents the neshama for the neshamot. What do we call that? That's the yechida. The yechida, right? So we have the nefesh corresponds to the malchut. We have the ruach that corresponds to the zer anpin. We have the neshama that corresponds to the binah. We have the chaya that corresponds to the chokhmah, and we have the yechida that corresponds to the keter. And that's why, what did he just say? Neshama la neshamot. The soul of all the souls. That's called the yechida. The bundle of all the souls is called chaya. Right? So you have the neshama, the ruach, and the nefesh. And then the gathering of all the neshamot is called the chaya. That's the concept of tzror hachayim. And all of those neshamot have one source, and that is called the yechida. All right, I have to stop here. If anybody has any questions, please make it in the comments. Bezat Hashem, I'll be back next week in Boca Raton. Baruch Adonai le'olam, amen ve'amen. Have a good day. Thank you so much for making me give the class. I love it, and we'll do this in the future if I'm not there. Okay, Bli Neder.
Have an easy fast if I don't get to talk to you before.
You too. Have an easy fast. Take care.
Thank you, Rob.
You're welcome.